Sir.
Oh, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. We ain't dead.
Nope.
We just all moved at the same time.
We just literally all relocated at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm coming to you from Massachusetts in a hotel. I am officially a masshole. My name is Rotten Deadite, and with me today are...
I am James, also known as Aramithius.
I'm Andrew, also known as the White Guar. I forgot the order for a second, so I had to
it's in the chat.
Oh,
I
I
had it
know.
all prepared and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I
did my job.
Yeah.
I'm Nick. I also moved. So I said I'd never move back to Houston, so here I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Icefire Warden. I'm new to the lore community.
Yeah. Boy, are you a rotten liar.
Whoa, wet behind the ears.
Says the man whose lore beard is probably dragging on the ground.
Yeah, right.
I'm just new. I got invited to the cast, just exchange program. The Dark Souls community.
We actually invited him on the cast today because he's canon, and he's the only member of the lore community who has canon lore. So, and I'm actually not kidding. So, today we're talking about the Fighters Guild, which, I mean, unfortunately is, for me, I don't know about you guys, but it's just not a really fascinating subject.
It's a necessary subject. I feel like in this world, it's just kind of like it would be strange to not have it. But having it isn't necessarily, exciting.
It's the mayonnaise of the sandwich of the guilds.
Yeah. Everybody's got one on. Everybody needs it, but you don't really taste it. And which is great because I haven't done one of these casts in like 2 months, so I'm really glad I'm coming back to this.
It's been a minute, yeah.
Boring ass
library.
But if you play ESO, there's an interesting thing that happens to the Fighters Guild in the respect that it almost isn't in it. It's the Fighters Guild in ESO is an organization dedicated to fighting Daedra and werewolves and I think vampires. And it seems a little bit odd, one might think, for in most games, and for probably I would hazard a guess. I don't think I'll get too much blowback on this, but I think the Fighters Guild is generally sort of like an organized team of mercenaries in most games. That's kind of the way they read in Oblivion to me.
Mercenaries mixed with like a football club.
It's they aspire to be more than mercenaries is the thing. I was doing some digging, and there's actually a recruitment poster in ESO, and it's literally, it starts off, is mercenary work too dull? Is soldiering too structured?
Yeah.
So it's almost like a volunteer fire department.
Yeah. Volunteer Tamriel Defense Force. Sort of thing. They're trying to be more than just mercenaries, which is kind of what they are in most of the games, despite the fact that that's not really what they started as.
Yeah, and it's in ESO their pitch is basically, well, you're more than a mercenary, but in ESO what that means is that you're fighting Daedra, and not to give too much of the plot away for it, I guess I can spoil it. It's part of the main line ESO.
It's 7 years old.
It's 7 years,
The point of this cast is to spoil.
Yeah, I guess so. It's in that I put spoilers in the tags. And in ESO, the Fighters Guild is actually they're sponsored, if you will. They run a Patreon, and their number one sponsor is Meridia, as it turns out.
Brought to you by Meridia Industries.
Meridia Industries. And they actually have they've been kind of contracted to specifically to fight Molech Ball, but it's not like Meridia is short on. It's not like there's a shortage of people to fight Molech Ball, I guess. But I mean,
no
X problems,
Backed by Meridia.
Yeah, and that's kind of the overall plot of the Fighters Guild in ESO is finding out that there's been some difficulty with getting the Fighters Guild has had some internal conflict, and not everybody was on board with the idea of of serving a Daedric Lord. Imagine that.
Well, yeah.
And it is actually a little bit unusual that in previous ages and in previous games, the Fighters Guild has been sort of mercenaries plus, and all of a sudden the Fighters Guild in ESO is kind of turned into, in a roundabout way, in a sort of a wink and a nudge kind of way, a Daedric quest. And that makes it interesting, which is great. If you've played Oblivion, you'll know that the Fighters Guild quests in Oblivion are the ones that you play when you're bored. I don't know what they had planned for the Fighters Guild in Oblivion, but it wasn't really earth-shattering, except you do get to, at one point or another, see something that may or may not be a hist.
Yeah, there's some hist
Oh my
stuff
God,
going on in there.
James, are you okay?
Yep, fine.
Sweet Jesus!
He's dead!
There's been an earthquake.
He lives in England. Someone call an ambulance.
There he is.
Because he can't do it in America.
Yeah.
And we're back on health insurance.
And we're back. This kills the James. And by the way, I apologize for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, because I'm casting literally from a single PC setup that I constructed out of spit and duct tape.
And a PC.
Yeah, there's no chat on the screen right now. So yeah, you're just gonna have to take my word for it that everybody in chat right now is saying really amazing and phenomenally deep things, and none of you get to know what it is. So.
They're at the moment trying to claim that Meridia's beacon is a webcam, and Meridia has an OnlyFans account, so you're missing quality stuff.
Yeah, nothing but Meridia feet pics. Yeah.
Absolute geniuses, the lot of them.
He's so smart.
Smart. So, unfortunately, that's the model that they used for the air quotes hist tree in Oblivion turned out to just be like a regular ass tree. So we didn't even get anything cool there.
I think it
except the implication that maybe
bulbous,
just there are histories everywhere. We don't know because they're just regular trees.
Yeah. If you can look at it like that, and also that apparently, oh dear, I just went red. I may be dropping.
Now that I think about it, the idea that maybe there are no trees, everything's just a hist tree.
Yeah. Yeah, we're buffering.
I don't know. I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, we're coming through fine for us, but I don't think chat is getting it.
No, I don't think chat's getting it. I think I think we may have effed. No, we're kind of coming back up. Okay, there we are.
Oh, good stuff.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Keep us on our toes here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
F5 if needed. So, yeah, the stream to Twitch is going to be a little bit weird, but the good news is I'm recording all of this, and so it'll at the very least end up on YouTube completely, but every once in a while you may hear me just go, all right, hold on a second, and we have to wait for me to come back up.
Like the old days.
It's going to make editing it fun.
Yeah, it'll be better on YouTube. I could just blow through it, actually. If we start to F, then I'll just blow through it. We don't have to.
Yep.
It'll work out.
And chat can just be confused.
Yeah, chat can just be confused. Yeah. So let's see. Vis-a-vis the Fighters Guild. So let's talk a little bit about why an organization of mercenaries might be a good idea. And the first example that came to mind when I was thinking about why you need a Fighters Guild in the Elder Scrolls universe is because there doesn't often seem to be a well, I mean, in real life, there have been in real life situations where there were well-organized militias, to use an American term, that were sort of sanctioned or at least allowed to exist by the government, and it was it usually ended up being basically organizations that rented bodyguards in large portions out to lords and estates and etc. And in some cases formed or augmented armies for people who needed them.
See also the samurai.
Although in fairness,
a little bit.
in Tamriel, that's almost how it happens. But they don't augment lords' armies; they replaced them. Is how it goes because
See also the samurai.
Yeah, yeah. A little bit.
Well,
Lords. I mean, in feudal Japan, there were still a lot of royally appointed people who had effectively standing armies, but they had, but like samurai would serve a lord. Samurai was really more of a I don't want to say a line of employment, but more of a job description. So at some point, at some point or another, you could use the term interchangeably for soldier, depending on when in Japan's history you're talking about.
Especially under the shogunate.
And so 9 times out of 10, usually in my recollection, let me say that before I say anything definitively. When you had a situation where there was a relatively large number of air quotes mercenaries, switch sides at the last minute, Richard III and Henry VII, maybe.
7th. Can't remember any.
Owen in chat is pointing out that there was a guild under a lord that switched sides last minute and made the difference between Richard III versus Henry VII.
I think it wasn't a guild. It was a particular lord. I want to say not Strathmore. It begins with S though. That's all I can remember. And he he supposedly died. Richard III supposedly died screaming treason, 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 because he was expecting this lord to come in on his side, and he declares for Henry right in the middle of the battle. So
it's a hell of a guy could have sent a memo. That's messed up.
Yeah.
Waiting until the last minute, wanted to see what the final offer was. And
Pretty
that
much.
Lord Tiber Septim. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And when these organizations started, basically, so this doesn't take much imagination to understand that if you start building an organization full of well-armed, well-equipped, and reasonably trained individuals, eventually you reach a critical mass where you begin to really make people with power nervous. And that's one of the reasons why the Warriors Guild or the Fighters Guilds in various games have a contract of some kind for their people to sign, because they need to be able to tell authorities, air quotes, authorities, as authority, as much of an authority as you can get, depending on when in Tamriel you're talking, kings or princes or lords or councils or whatever, that your organization is not going to be used to usurp the throne or council or whatever the hell. And that it's not going to be used for revolution, basically. And at that point, what you end up with is a contract that has rules in it. And things start to look a hell of a lot like police. And that, I think, is where the Fighters Guild in the Elder Scrolls hasn't really been fully exploited, I think, is the idea of mercenaries or an organization like the Fighters Guild being used to investigate or, at the very least, enforce laws. And that's something that you do a little bit of in Oblivion, but you do it under the official under an official capacity for one of the I don't remember which, was it Brabble? I don't remember.
That sounds right.
I think so. But you're literally being hired by the regional ruler to perform that. The advantage that the Fighters Guild has for the Elder Scrolls sort of like economy is that it allows anybody with enough dosh to purchase one or more thugs for hire without having to deal with the seedier side of the economy, without having to hire cutthroats and murderers.
Well, not only that, it I would say it also serves as a sort of economic rejuvenator, because we have so many. I mean, if we look at game data, which I know is not indicative of lore, but if you look at the populations of the games, there are far more bandits than there are people. And I mean, I think this is clearly so that we have stuff to fight.
Yeah.
But I mean, if there is a large chunk of the population that has turned to brigandry and banditry and they're being ne'er-do-wells or whatever, then
yeah, like Florida.
yeah. Then I mean we have a lot of I suppose capital, to put it that way. I mean they've got their gear, they've got their money. They tip over, wealthy caravans and they steal this and they control that. And the Fighters Guild tends to, I mean, like in Oblivion, if you finish the Fighters Guild quest line and you are now the head of the Fighters Guild, you get to, I think it's like every in-game week or every in-game month or something, you get a cut of the treasure that's received from different members of the guild going out and fighting bandits or Daedra or whatever it is. So that all that loot is coming back into the civilizations, and it sort of reintroduces that wealth that was stolen back to whatever city or municipality or city state, whatever. And I mean I don't know if that's an intentional thing in the writing, but I mean it seems to me that's kind of how it works.
Well, I always kind of figured that, I mean, they didn't really have the time or inclination, I think, to develop the hell out of like a Fighters Guild contract, but I would imagine that if somebody in ESO or something like that got the chance to write out a Fighters Guild contract, there would usually be like some kind of a packaging system or something where it's like, you could pay a flat sum for, like it would be like hiring somebody to work on your house. There's like a flat fee, and then there's if or better yet, the way that you actually hire honest to god bodyguards in at least in modern times is
hazard pay.
Yeah, exactly. There's a difference between the rate that they earn when they're just standing around looking tough and the rate that they earn when they're actually fighting people, and they generally charge by day and not by hour. And there's there might even be, in the case of some contracts, you might say, okay, I need you to go in and clear out this cave full of goblins, which sounds like a very Oblivion-y kind of thing to happen, where you have to hire we've got these goblins are raiding our damn cows again, and you have to go out and hire some mercenaries to go clean out the local cave, and you just tell them you can keep whatever loot you can find, and if you agree to, they can keep whatever loot they can find, then maybe they knock a little bit, like they might knock 15% off or something like that, depending on what they're about to go into.
My bad. Also, I want to apologize for I'm not really talking too much. I had a cavity filled today, so my mouth is still fucking numb as hell.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah, so
I like to play with it, like you poke your jaw, and it feels like you're poking somebody else's jaw.
Yeah, it fucking feels weird as hell.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I like to live in that little space right there, where you're like, is that my jaw?
What else would it be?
But with the I do want to say that it does seem to be implied that, unlike how most militias are kind of in a response to people basically want to have their own little private army to go against Andiness, basically against a larger authority. And Elder Scrolls, at least in Tamriel, the Fire Skill seems to be a response to the fact that there wasn't any armies anybody could turn to, because originally during the Akaviri Pontificate, Vertisus Shea, I'm just calling him Shea because it's just easier.
It's easier.
He had a lot of detractors, basically a lot of Remanists who did not like his rule, and a lot of the independent kingdoms throughout the continent were basically trying to uprise against him. So he basically took the Legion and went on numerous campaigns to basically squash every other army in the continent. And he succeeded, which the Imperial Legion was the only standing army for the longest time in Tamriel, and probably still is to this day. But because there was only one long-staying army, and there wasn't any smaller little individual garrisons that you could actually maintain to field any troops to help support any other kingdoms, that's where the Sithfilm came from, which were the progenitors to the Fighters Guild. They were basically mercenaries hired out to do the grunt work that the Imperial Legion didn't want to basically deal with, because they were the only people around qualified to deal with stuff.
Yeah, they have to stand around in forts all day and assume the supervisory position. And
pretty much.
And even if you do have a local legionary garrison, the paperwork involved in getting help is probably hell.
See, that's
Like,
what
like because you have to get it. You have to get
Hmm.
approval from the fort commander, who has to get approval from the regional commander, who has to get blah, 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 goes all the way up and then has to come all the way down. And by the time you get approval to do that, everybody's already been dead.
you got to sign out for
Yeah.
that sword. You can't take that sword anyway. You got to sign out for it. What the hell are you doing?
In triplicate.
Mhm.
By which time the rats have taken over your basement and established their own independent fiefdom.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's
God,
that's
the
kind
Imperial
of how it
Legion
works.
being like
that
Vogons
it's-
kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's that sort of kind of makes sense that the Fighters Guild is just making it. It's one of those guilds where having one single thing that is a guild actually makes a whole heap of sense.
Mhm.
If just from a force control point of view, if you are
Yeah.
trying to make sure that no one can build up independent military power from you, then just say, right, the only people who are allowed to carry swords and wield them in relatively large numbers are people who I have licensed. You can only use them for a certain amount of time.
Mhm.
It's a big move towards sort of a centralized state for Tamriel, so to
Yeah.
speak, which
Well,
is
And at the same,
I can't help but think of it in a similar way to like how the Dunmer handled the Morag tongue.
Right.
It's a part of the culture, and while assassination is illegal in Morrowind, if you remember the Morag tongue, you have a way past that illegality, and that is, well, I have this writ here.
Mhm.
Here, take a look, and you
But
know,
I am
and-
rich, so.
yeah. So if you've ever played Morrowind, which I'm sure all of us have, you know, and you do the Morag Tong assassinations, and a guard stops you, you go, oh hey, I have this writ, and I'll go, oh okay, I see everything.
I can do. You see this? It says I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. This just says
But
I
it's-
can do whatever I want. Yes.
Although the way that system works is that the theory goes is that you are supposed to hand it in.
Mhm.
It's not like
Yeah.
there are a bunch of players that try to keep them as trophies and say, aha, I didn't need these, I'm that good.
Mhm.
But the way the system works in the lore is that you need to hand
Yeah.
them in to rectify, yes, this is an official assassination.
It's part of the
for
process. It's
Tom.
part of the paperwork.
Sign here.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so what I'm trying to drive at here is there are no other assassination guilds that do, other than maybe the Dark Brotherhood.
Oh, they don't
But
exist.
but I mean,
Not canon.
they're more everywhere but Morrowind.
Mhm.
I think that's because of the Morag tongue. They guard their territory.
What's
but-
the origin of the Rat Quest being the first mission for the Fighters Guild? Okay, so it's a role-playing game. And a lot of the developers who were working on Morrowind know full well that the first adventure you have your party do in any RPG is go kill rats in a basement.
What do you do at the beginning
Or-
of Fallout 1?
Yep.
You leave the vault and kill some rats.
Kill some rats. Yeah, Baldur's Gate. Yeah, somebody's got a problem with rats in their basement. That's what you do. So that's why Rat Quest is the first mission for Fighters Guild.
Just
D-
a
Origins of
nod to
D&D.
RPG.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, except it also involved pillows.
Yeah, that was my
You know, in a
favorite part.
perfectly normal way.
I always took all the pillows.
Just
Wash your hands after?
pillows in a normal like capacity, not like a larger volume
No,
of pillows.
I made
not a
forks out of them.
dysfunctional amount of pillows, just a
I
regular.
would call it. I collected
pillows.
pillows. I made a fort for myself
Yeah.
at Dren Plantation.
Yeah,
once.
out of a
Yeah.
perfectly reasonable quantity of pillows.
And I
not
made a
not
statue
lot.
out of stacked clothes, a helmet, and a sword, and he was like this.
What's the metaphysical implication, and why does it lead to Amaranth? Captain, are you the only moderator available, or can you ban yourself?
Well, if
Yeah.
you
Well,
promise to finish one of these first, I can explain it to you.
Yeah.
So
To me, it seems like the Fighters Guild functions similarly to that. Similarly. Wow,
There we
that's a
go.
hard word. To what we've been saying, but also, I kind of see them as like a union. Like
yeah,
A little bit.
straight,
Yeah.
straight up, like
oh yeah,
we're the bodyguard union.
Or-
we form together not just so that the ye olde lord can be protected, but
Or-
also so that we can say, you want us to do what?
yeah. We're not.
Well, and
we're, Yeah.
And I get the feeling it's a lot like a club too. Like that, yeah. I don't know how often people do that nowadays, but like the Shriners or the Freemasons or what's
Their
it?
country club.
The Odd Fellows. These groups that they just kind of do their thing, and like there's a camaraderie sort of thing. There might be some traditional, almost ritualistic kind of stuff that
now the only thing in my head is the Fighters Guild being the Tamrielic equivalent of your of like a golf country club.
Yeah.
It's just full of the kind of people you would
instead
find
of plaid trousers, it's just plated greaves. What's the difference?
I think that's more the Undaunted. They're the ones that had the most fun.
Well, I honestly, I think the Undaunted, I think they were only included in ESO to separate, to have the like dungeons and trials and stuff separate from the Fighters Guild. But I would consider the Undaunted as a subset of the Fighters Guild.
It's like like the sports division of the Fighters Guild.
Division.
Plus it's something that kind of springs up during the interregnum. It's because all of the institutions are breaking down because of the Three Banners War and all that. Then even the Fighters Guild isn't quite what it should be. I mean, when you've got centralized anything, then it's going to have problems. And the Fighters Guild is centralized, and particularly if you've got people. I don't know how obvious it is that you're doing stuff for Meridia. I'd imagine that there are some high ups that might be aware of it and not like it, and so they want to say, "Aha, we want to go off and just kill stuff. We don't want any Daedric strings attached." So I imagine that's where the Undaunted might come from.
There's also a lot of I mean, you're going to deal with having to keep your people happy, and I don't know culturally what members of the kind of people who would join the Fighters Guild, what do they think about serving Daedra? I mean, that historically doesn't work well for a lot of people. and
not a lot of people are going to know about it.
Well, in any group of people, I mean, you can't really treat them as a monolith in terms of their opinions and life experiences and worldviews, right? So some may be more okay with dealing with a Daedra than others would be. I mean, you're going to have a spectrum in the entire population. So,
but in order to sort of keep the peace among the troops, you kind of just have to come up with a hard and fast rule.
Some kind of standard, I guess. I mean, are you going to follow the rules or not? If not, okay, bye.
Look, I mean, you can be a sellsword if you want, but if you want medical.
Another thought I had was I was thinking about the various sellsword groups or companies, like in Game of Thrones. We've got the Black Sun, isn't that where Dario Naharis is that's his group? The Black Suns. I mean, they're just roving bands of mercenaries who have grouped together, and we'll be your army for a certain amount of money. I mean, I think of that kind of idea could apply to the Fighters Guild. There's just a lot of people who are interested in the martial aspects of life, and they want the adventure and they want the gold. And I mean, there's so many different reasonings behind why someone would join the Fighters Guild. Maybe you're a retired soldier, or
I sure do love killing.
Maybe you took an arrow in the knee, or something.
I mean, you can still be of some use, right? I mean, that seems like kind of a logical step for these people to take. But I mean, like we were kind of hinting at, and I don't think we ever actually explicitly said it, but the Fighters Guild existing to try and curb other fighters guilds that aren't under imperial control and therefore are less safe. That could be kind of a political purpose. And I don't think anyone's mentioned the guild charters or
the Guild Act.
Guild Act, that's the one. Because Versailles, I believe, established that, or was it Severian Chorak? It was one of the two.
It was his dad. It was Shay.
It was
okay.
Shay.
Okay. Yeah, I knew it was one of the snake fellas. But that allowed for the Mages Guild, the Fighters Guild. I don't think the Thieves Guild is part of that.
No.
Because
No.
because the Thieves Guild isn't
Not inclined.
a guild. It's its own.
This isn't Discworld.
No.
Yeah.
No.
You have you had
yeah,
the
I think it's just those two, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mages Guild.
Mages
Well, no.
Guild, Fighters Guild.
You do have
Architects
other
Guild,
ones.
Prostitutes Guild, Sinnerist Guild.
Oh,
Prostitute Guild, yeah.
the Cartographers Guild that exists.
Yeah, you have all of the mundane ones
Yeah.
that aren't that interesting to play in a computer game.
I don't know, man. Cartographers Guild sounds like it would be fun.
To be fair,
yeah.
we got some interesting stuff about the Architects Guild. So
Yeah. And the what's it called? The Bards Guild.
yeah,
That's more the Bard's College if you think
Bard's
about
College. That's what it
Elder
was.
Scrolls
Yeah.
5.
But
I don't
think
know. I don't think they would need a charter. It's just you graduate from there, and people
Yeah,
know that you're
it's-
supposedly decent.
It's like an art school, like
The
you know,
sort of-
you're
I,
gonna
ha- I
study
have
with
my
I think you're-
BA, my bachelor's in acoustics.
Yeah.
I think you're
Right.
thinking about the Sinnerist Guild, who are actually they're basically like the troubadours. They do bard stuff. They're
Okay.
Yeah,
basically like the lore community in a sense in Daggerfall.
Oh
They're the
no,
ones
that's
that deal
terrible.
with writing like fiction and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
like-
they don't have those in
they're like
Morrowind because they have the
off-brand.
savants. That's
Well,
the lore guild in
So,
Morrowind.
I'm gonna twist things back into a cultural thing. We
Mhm.
know that the Fighters Guild exists in the Empire. It is a specifically imperial organization. There are other organizations that exist in other places, such as the Companions. How do the Companions differ from the Fighters Guild?
Well, for
Well,
one, they don't
they-
fight werewolves.
yeah.
They're kind of working. They're kind of almost working under
I have
the
no
radar.
idea why.
Like
yeah, the
Blackwood
companions are
Company
definitely
and
working under the
everything
radar.
else.
They also have like the companions also had a tie-in to a very very important cultural event for
Yep.
all Nords.
Yeah.
And so they had this reputation to uphold as being like the extension of this organization of warriors that
Yeah.
came over to Tamriel from
He's Isgrimor and the 500 Companions,
Mhm.
or thereabouts.
500 football hooligans.
You
yeah, it's an
also had to
old
remember
franchise. That's
that-
right, Captain. Yeah.
Yeah, you also have to remember that Cyrodiil really relies on Skyrim, not in regards to just trade, but also in regards to troops for the Legion.
True.
So they probably don't want to piss off the Norse that much by basically telling them to take one of their most cherished organizations based around their
Yeah.
earliest points in history and tell them to go fuck off.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
So they
I don't know.
It's not. We don't do any fighting. We're just a historical club.
Yeah, I don't-
We offer companionship.
I mean, I kind of think
and
of
go on outings.
Mhm.
I kind of think of Jorvaskr as what's the hall of Beowulf? What is Beowulf's hall?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like
Yeah.
it's a mead hall.
It's a meat hall, yeah.
basically.
Mhm.
And so
It's where you
know,
go and you boast of the things that you have done.
yeah, thirst is very similar.
Fight with your
and-
companions and quench your thirst with mead.
Oh God.
Yeah, so I
medieval
think-
times. It's
I-
Tamriel's equivalent of medieval times.
Ooh.
I don't know that the Empire would necessarily look at that as, oh yeah, this is like the Fighters Guild. They're gonna, it's more cultural, like the Morag Tong. The Morag
Mhm.
Tong is allowed to exist.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we got
Despite efforts to stop it.
we got the Treaty
Well.
of the Armistice that at least provisions for that. But for the Nords, I mean, maybe it could be a placative. Placative, is that a word?
Mhm.
Sure. Go for it.
where we're not trying to piss off Skyrim. You can have this club. I mean, you're just sitting around drinking, telling tales, right? That's all you're doing. Oh yeah, sure. Wink, wink.
Yeah, whatever.
And,
Yeah.
you
Nice
know,
armor,
we-
PS.
It's
We have no idea what you're talking about.
Mhm. Well, it's I mean, that's the thing about the companions that kind of throws me is that they're air quotes secretly werewolves. They didn't really try very hard to hide it.
Yeah.
And they're being hunted by what? Not Vigilance of Stendar.
The silver
Hand.
Yeah, the Silver
Yeah.
Hand.
But
Oh, I know, but I mean, the thing that I'm forgetting is that the original conception for all of these guilds was that you were supposed to be able to play with the guild or against the guild, and so you were supposed to be able to join the Silver Hand originally in Skyrim, but they
and
couldn't quite fit
possibly consider What if the Silver Hand has a reputation of being just crazy conspiracy lunatics?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and if they had kept that part of the quest in the game, maybe you would have gotten that angle where it was, where they would have been able to talk about how well or how badly the companions have been able to hide their canine tendencies. But
or whether
and
I mean, I want because I think it's interesting how werewolves have become a matter of fact for the companions when that was never a thing that Isgramor had to deal with. I mean, Isgramor may have been a dragon, and the 500 companions might have been dragons, according to the out of game text. Isgramor and the 500 or thereabouts companions, or something like that. The Return of Isgramor, I think is what it's called. Because Kirkbride starts and he lists all the companions, or a bunch of them, not all of them. That's 500 names. That'd be a lot. And then
John,
when they come
John and John,
and when they come back, all of a sudden their names are dragon names, and they've been Isgramor is Malefax, I think is the name that he gives him.
I think that was possibly something to do with MK trying to establish the idea that the Nords were transcalpic in some way, shape, or form, and that the dragons of each Kalpa were the Nords of the previous, or something.
Yeah.
I remember
an idea
that somewhere.
I kind of liked. I always kind of liked that idea. And I think that was something Evan Smith and I were talking about once. I thought, well, what if Alduin is the last dragonborn from the previous Kalpa who failed in his duty, and so the Kalpa was eaten, and then Alduin was gone, and now the last dragonborn is Alduin now. And
it
so
smells pretty Dragon's Dogma in here.
Yeah, a little bit.
Does it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Never played it.
Yeah, and then you do various things, and so you do various things, and then whenever anyone looks at you, all you can see is a dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of a line.
There's one of my favorite stories from actual Nordic mythology is a story of a hero, one Viking, but a Nordic hero who goes out and defeats a dragon and steals its hoard, brings it back to his town, and puts it into his keep, and then won't let anybody touch the gold, and eventually actually turns into a dragon.
Yeah.
So the gold turned the lust for his own gold turns him into a dragon, and I think that's got that's kind of a that's a good angle to throw things with Tamriel, but the idea of dragons or really anything turning into what it the outer reflection is reflecting the nature of the thing. So if you it's a little bit like mantling. If you behave enough like a dragon, you'll turn into one. Whether you want to or not.
Is that why Jeff Bezos went to space?
No, that's when he turned a rocket into his own penis.
Oh, that's right. That was the symbolism.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
So the thing that I sort of enjoy about thinking about the Fighters Guild as being swords for contract is how this affects the literally like the common farmer, the common middle class homeowner of Tamriel. How does that apply to daily life for somebody when you provided you're not literally living in a keep, you don't have heavily armed guys walking around making sure that nobody steals from you. So you kind of have to take matters into your own hands a lot when you're living out, in the country. And I think that's one of the things that that the Fighters Guild offers is that the different. So, for example, just hypothetically speaking, if you found yourself a victim of the Thieves Guild, or or local ruffians or something, and you need to get a little bit of enforcement happening. I'm not saying revenge, but I mean, you got to get people to respect your authority, and stay the hell off your property. Then you have very little choice except to go out and hire some tough-looking sons of bitches with some weaponry. The problem is that eventually, if you so like for example, imagine House Dress in Morrowind living on their farm. They had they had guys in like very, very serious armor walking around their farm, literally attacking anybody who got anywhere near it. I think as the Noreverian, I don't think you can even walk onto the land without getting just attacked out of nowhere. I think I don't remember.
What place are you talking about?
There's a dress farm outside of Vivek.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, that's Dren
Plantation. Yeah, but it's owned by.
Yeah, that's owned by.
No, you're right.
Venom Dren is the head there.
Not
His
House
brother,
Dress at all. Yeah.
No. They're because they're Hilalo counselors.
Right, but that actually even goes further to my point, is that it's not part of the House Lalu canton. It's not it's a rich guy and his fort that he's built, as much as he can without literally building a fort.
I always kill everyone there and make it my house, then I release all the slaves.
That's
my
I think that's just down to the nature of force within a universe like the Elder Scrolls. It's it's not as easy as enforcing a series of restricted sales channels for getting people with swords like it is with guns.
Right.
It's much harder to stop that sort of thing from proliferating.
Yeah.
And so you're going to get a degree of independent operators, if you like.
Sure.
That will be able to either buy the kit or pay someone to make it for them, and so that they can actually have their own swords to run around with.
Yeah.
But the bit that I'm kind of curious about is how things like the Blackwood Company happen, because they sort of act as that you read the press in Oblivion, and they're treated as kind of like the new alternative competition to the Fighters Guild.
Right.
But it should be a state monopoly on violence.
Yeah,
that's the theory that an organization can come out and say hire us instead of the Fighters Guild.
Yeah.
In theory, they should be stamped on. The regulator should come knocking and say, "Can you hand over your swords, please?"
Yeah, we need to see what kind of contracts you people are signing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's all part of the Guild Act as well, though, because one of the reasons why, you can contract out, different members of different guilds to do particular jobs, but the reason why, I know, a big example of this is in ESO's, final kind of quest line in regards to the, going into basically reverse invading Cold Harbor, is that when basically the free governments of the time can't agree on actually just working together, because that's the easy option and this is a game, so they're like, well, we'll just allow all the guilds to just band together and just go fuck Mullaball's day up, because we'll give them that authority.
We'll fund them. Yeah,
that was a major plot point, was that the Fighters Guild and Mages Guild did not take sides in the Three Banners War. That was a major. That was why they are the ones that are spearheading the fight against the Plane Meld. You get daily quests through the Fighters Guild. Okay, you got to close 3 dolmens. And the Mages Guild, I don't remember what the Mages Guild dailies are.
You go find books.
Go read some books.
Read a book.
Which, I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with the interregnum. I
make an argument for why restoration is a valid school of.
You're just being a nerd.
Yeah,
that's the whole point.
Look, all you have to do is just go eat 3 books.
Yeah, just eat them.
Consume the lore.
Yeah.
You are what you eat, I guess.
Yes. Eat it to become it.
I'm almost surprised that they do that, actually, because I would almost consider the existence of an independent guild in the situation that the interregnum is to be a threat. It's something that the factions can't control or don't control. You
can't. That's why Shay, Potent Shade, actually created the Guild Act, because you can't. While they're officially a part and licensed by the Empire doesn't have direct control over them. They can't use them to fight interprovincial wars, and the provinces can't use them to fight other promises with them. But at the same time, the guilds can't just wage like their own little mini war against Cyrodiil or something like that. So they're like independent companies, still part of the official government, but no one really has actual control over them. So
is that why most provinces don't have independent standing armies?
Pretty much
branches.
Yeah, because he literally his whole point was when he ascended to the throne and took control of the Reman dynasty was that all these people are trying to fight against me. I'm going to have one army in this entire continent, and it's going to be my army.
Yeah.
So he wiped them all out.
Yeah, and the what I was going to mention previously is one of the fastest ways to control something is to legalize it. So in the case of like standing armies and groups of mercenaries and so on, the fastest way to get them to work basically within what you consider to be law is to just recognize their validity and then wrap paperwork around them. And the next thing you know, you've got, you say, well, you could do all this business now. You don't have to do it undercover. You don't have to be meeting people you can have an actual guild hall instead of meeting people in an inn somewhere. And your guys don't have to sneak around. You can advertise in cities and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's really great. But in exchange for that, you have to sign this guild act. You have to conduct your business in a way that we decide is legal or illegal, and
also, pretty please don't go walking around literally covered in blood. That's a little gross.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if they went so far as to regulate appearance, but there would definitely be a lot of stuff in there about here are the things that you can't do. You can't, we're going to define civilians. We're going to define what is a civilian and what isn't. We're going to define.
Behold, the Geneva Conventions.
Yeah, exactly. Things that you can do with prisoners and things that you can't do, and what's a monster and what's livestock.
People with rights.
Yeah, and.
Goblins aren't people, apparently.
And they have to, deal with the, delegate from the Lib Dems arguing for, goblin rights or something, and so it's just that's just kind of the way that that's one of the other really interesting things to me about the mercenaries about the Fighters Guild is that it's the idea of an organization being monitored and controlled simply by just being recognized is sort of like a really kind of like political Tai Chi move,
And that's kind of also why the Blackwood Company is actually interesting in Oblivion, because technically the Fire Skill taking the fight still is illegal.
Yes,
if you think about it, because the Blackwood Company is actually probably registered in the Guild Act. And
they
that
might
means
be, but
that
they might.
can.
Well, worse yet, they might be registered as a private organization. And it was sort of like the difference between when the U.S. Army was hiring.
Yeah, they're like a Blackwater company, which I don't think the names are a coincidence.
Well, that Blackwater was in the news a lot when Oblivion was being made.
Yeah. So I think the Blackwood Company is named after that.
Yeah,
probably. Yeah,
and that was the reason why the Blackwood Company was as interesting to people, especially members of the Fighters Guild, was that it was you don't have to deal with all the paperwork and the the restraints and so on. I can go out and I can put on I can put on whatever 5.11 khakis I want and get my AR-15 as operator as I want, and I don't have to worry about
because it looks like. I don't know if that would it count as a guild though, because it's a Blackwood Company.
It's not a guild. It's a company.
So
they're non-union.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot like being a privatized non-union organization.
So they are known for taking less scrupulous jobs and seem to operate without moral qualms. By undercutting the Fighters Guild, the Blackwood Company grew to over 100 members and has become over 100, and is becoming a serious threat to the guild's existence.
Yeah, kill some air quotes goblins. Exactly. Yeah.
This gymnasium full of people.
It's full of a bunch of guys who would like to tell you that they were in the Marines, but they weren't in the Marines.
Plus, they could also compete on price, if I remember correctly, because the Fighters Guild, in theory, part of what you pay the Fighters Guild goes to the Imperial government. So the Blackwood Company would not have to pay that sort of a stipend, and although if they were, I don't know whether it would if they're technically, if they are technically a guild of their own. I don't think there's any mention of dues for anyone else that
no,
gets paid to the
I think
government.
I think we could consider them a guild, but whether the Guild Act would consider them a guild,
Yeah.
I think is the real difference.
Yeah. Is it a legal definition or not? And if they didn't sign the Guild Act, or if there wasn't a Guild Act in Oblivion,
it is never once in the UASP article referred to as a guild. I don't know if that's just writer's choice or because it's always called the company. Blackwood Company.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not a guild. I mean, they probably think of themselves as a guild.
and like in game code, it counts as a faction. That's the term that they use. The only rank that's ever available to us as players is company member. So it's not even guild member. It's company member. So you've signed on to this company.
It's the Amazon of fighters guilds.
It makes me think of like the Hudson Bay Company or something. These companies that, I'm thinking more of like frontier companies in like the pioneer era in North America.
I'm betting if you had somebody who owed you money, you went to the Blackwater Company or Blackwood Company, not the Fighters Guild.
Yeah, like
I need you to go beat this Argonian until he coughs
you would go to the companions though, which is another interesting point of differentiation.
It's true,
there.
the companions had those kind of quests. Yeah, go and beat this dude up. Yeah.
Although I think that's possibly to do with the companions essentially being on the ropes when you start. It's that they'll take any jobs so long as it pays.
It took me, and they just met me in the middle of the field.
It's like if
I was late to fight an ogre, and they still took me.
Yeah, if the companions, I mean, I think of them more like a mortal Valhalla. Like we fight, we drink. That's what we do. That's our.
But look, man, we just destroy our livers for fun.
Yeah, and so
and fight each other.
Stabbing or drinking.
Because of that, and because of the connection to Nord culture and how they feel about Sovngarde, which is literally Valhalla. I feel like there would be more honor and reverence for that. So I mean, like you said, they're on the ropes at the beginning of the game, and so they'll take anything. But I think that's probably uncharacteristic of them to do that kind of dirtier work.
They're anyway.
I feel like they would be more like, I'm gonna slay this giant beast for the bragging rights. I want to be able to say
I heard there's this troll up on this mountain that keeps killing people.
Yeah.
You're gonna go beat the crap out of it.
I wanna earn a title, a nickname.
I'm gonna make that dragon my wife.
Anyway. Whereas the Blackwood Company is like, they don't care what you want them to do. They'll go and do it if you give them money. Like that.
They're Amazon.
Although to be fair, we do know that some of the guilds do work together closely about certain jobs. Like the D Guild will, if there's something comes up, somebody sends them like a request, they might be like, yes, that's to assassinate. I'm gonna talk to my friend the Dark
to assassinate.
They want to do this, or
sure,
or like if somebody needs like a sorcerer dealt with or something like that, a fire skill member would probably be like, you should probably talk to the Mages Guild about that. We don't really deal with spells.
We stab
We're like
people
a bash
in the
head with a stick kind of guy.
The thing with wizards is they tend to throw fire, and that burns. So,
and I find that to be hot frequently. Yeah, and
that is. I think you'll find that is not covered under our collective bargaining insurance policy.
Yeah.
That's why they call me Rolf Crispy Skin.
The professional indemnity insurance of the Fighters Guild does not cover that sort of damage.
That does not cover incineration.
Yeah.
So we've got Blackwood Company, we've got the Imperial Fighters Guild, we got the Companions. Are there any other groups that we can think of that fall into this blanket category? Maybe.
Well,
I mean, or are they kind of like the KKK?
I got the impression that the Silver Hand were basically a bunch of, it's the equivalent of the conspiracy nuts in their vans almost.
Yeah,
because
except
they're,
they were really
they're
well
hanging
armed.
out in ruined forts and in places underground and stuff. They're operating totally extra legally.
Well,
But there's
not
also
even
that.
if they're as well armed and well equipped as they are then we're a little bit more like QAnon.
But also they have like
The
pieces of
Klan.
they have
Or-
pieces
Yeah,
of like
I mean-
That's what I said.
woodcrafts, I think.
Yeah, because
They
it's
do.
like I mean, let's take I kind of like that QAnon connection here because the things that they say they're against aren't necessarily bad. No, people should not drink baby blood. That is terrible.
Mhm.
You know, if there were lizards controlling the world, I'd like to know about
Sure, absolutely.
it. You know, but the thing is, these things are so far from reality.
The
Yeah.
if is the size of Spain.
Yeah, and so people in Winterhold are like, look, if there were werewolves, of course we would want them like hunted down and killed. Of course,
but there
aren't any.
Yeah, exactly. So they're
Meanwhile, every one of the companions is just sitting there whistling
Yeah, just scratching behind their ear.
yeah, don't look at us.
Also-
with their foot.
I also like to bring up the Dawn Guard and the Vigilance of Stendar as well
Yep.
as potential
Yeah.
splinter groups of
Yeah.
the Fires Guild.
Yeah.
Oh, see,
Because especially in ESO, because actually there's that skill in the Dawn Guard. I mean, fucking the Fire skill, skill line where they basically found the cache of Dawn Guard, basically guns because they function like guns in the game.
Mhm.
They're not crossbows, but they find those and took them, and they were like, "Yeah, we're going to just use these because they're useful."
Yeah,
they deal a shitload of damage.
They're not banned in the Geneva Convention,
yet
mostly because they
today
don't know about it yet.
I checked.
Because the Dawn Guard DLC sucks. We're just going to use their stuff, but not directly reference it at all after this.
There you go.
I can feel the Serana simps just quivering right now. They're
True
so
STL is a
angry.
bad place to be right now.
Yeah.
So let's
Fort
see.
Fort Dawnguard had some cool architecture.
Oh, it did
Well,
though, didn't it?
Actually,
It's cool
I had a
looking.
point. I had a point I wanted to make about the Vigilance of Stendar, at
Mhm.
least. I don't know that I would count them similar to Fighters Guild. I mean, they have the little bit of that flavor, but they're more related to the Temple of Divines
Yeah, they're very directional.
than to a Fighters Guild. And so we could almost look at the Dawn Guard and the Vigilance, which are very similar entities. One is like 25% Fighters Guild and 75% Divines, and the other one is like 75% Fighters Guild with 25% Divines. So it's like they're on different sides of a spectrum here. With the Divinity and the Fighters Guild on two different ends.
One of them is a group of priests that'll punch you.
Yeah.
And the other one is a group of people who will kill you while
praying.
While saying a prayer about it, yeah. So we've got those talking about the Silver Hand, and the Silver Dawn is basically the same thing. I mean, lots of silver, and they're against werewolves. I think. Who else? I mean, what does Elsewhere have? I don't know that they have a
Ooh, we need Felix.
uniform guild.
Yeah,
or Michael.
Yeah, I'm not the authority on Elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of a single cultural thing about fight. I mean, there's the different martial arts temples.
Yeah, that was my go-to. There's the expectation that if you need something sorting out, you go to the temples, like in the Southern Elsewhere quest line. When they've got that bell that you're sorting out, it's kind of like, if you want something found, you go to this temple, they ring a bell, they will sort it for you. I can imagine that you would have that Kajiti martial arts are enough of an institution that you would have similar stuff, at least pre Ridtharidata, when you would have all of those those different and distinct groups.
Totally unrelated. I want someone to write a kung fu script but it's Khajiit martial arts schools, and they're like competing, like old school martial, like, oh, my wushu is better than your wushu, and then they fight to figure it out, and then like a new school comes in, and then, like, their master fights the other master, and he's really good, and it's like, oh, how can we beat this school? Yeah, go ahead.
Cat Fu coming this summer.
I just find the idea of
Awful
duck mucks absolutely hilarious.
Mhm.
That could be a lot of fun. Maybe I'll write that.
There you go.
I just gotta watch a shitload of kung fu movies, and I'll be fine.
So here's a question for you guys. What do you want the Fighters Guild in Elder Scrolls 6 to be?
More Akaviri, personally.
Yeah.
That's kind of my bugbear. If they're supposed to be descended from the Sithim, and there's that sort of there was the argument to start with that they were supposed, were they going to be Akaviri? Were they not? And there's no real trace of it at any point.
Well,
I would like some institutional memory of that.
Well, you see some of it in ESO, mainly with their armor models,
Mhm.
Fair
but
enough.
outside of that, I feel like ESO kind of shafted the Fighters Guild in regards to just honestly linking them to Meridia.
It's just
all the early
wasn't
motifs are just
yeah.
shitty looking.
it just ends up being
garbage.
like the Fighters Guild, and then the what do you call it, the rating quest reward.
Undaunted.
The Undaunted. It's
Undaunted,
just
yeah.
it just turns into just
Yeah, I
reputation
just
grind
felt-
for rewards.
I felt like it was just kind of unnecessary for them to be linked to Meridia in the sense, because it was like they could have been doing something a lot more interesting than that.
Yeah.
Instead of just,
I mean,
we're
well,
gonna
and
go kill Daedra
I
because we
think-
got tricked by Daedra.
A lot of
Prince.
the original, a lot of the vanilla non-expansion ESO content is a little bit disappointing.
Yeah.
Well,
not all
I
of it,
think
but
I think I did that for writing reasons, because they wanted to tie it into the main story, and like Meridia is
that's why.
your Daedric
right.
benefactor.
No, you're right.
Mhm.
And so I don't know that that's indicative that the Fighters Guild in general is aligned with Meridia.
Which
Oh, right. They're
which
definitely not.
Daedric
Their
prince
goals-
would you have rather had the Fighters Guild aligned to?
Boethia.
Well,
Yeah.
Either Hircine,
I wouldn't have done any. I would just had them be
hunting
more of
the
a-
Daedra.
Yeah.
then
Boethiah is
the
a good
Daedra-
example. I always
Sanguine
Sang-
for no reason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but see,
I'm-
I'll put it to you this way:
I'm drunk partying. I'm gonna get violent.
if
don't like that.
if somebody on the writing team had literally just taken a wheel of all the Daedric princes and spun it and landed on one of them randomly, you would have ended up with, depending on which writer you're talking about, you could have ended up with something very inspirational, because that's kind of like, I personally feel like some of the best, I've said this before, but I think some of the best Elder Scrolls lore that we've ever had has come about because of compromises made outside of the game, or due to the game, because I mean, I think all great art happens under constraint, and I think that's one of the easiest ways to come up with writing prompts, for example, is to just randomly throw some words together and stuff, and then make yourself stick to it.
Yeah.
and-
Create a funnel for yourself.
Yeah, and in
you
the
know.
process of figuring out a way to shoehorn this bullshit in to actually work, you accidentally end up with something really fun and interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think
Surprise!
that's a
The
fun method of
patron of
world
the
building.
surprise! The patron of the thieves of the Fighters Guild is actually Shagorath. Figure out how.
or something, yeah, or Periite,
Periite would be
well, I mean,
interesting.
honestly, if you did anything with Periite, I'd be happy. I mean, it's just a very
Please.
Yeah.
underused
so would
Daedric
LJ.
prince.
LJ would be
I
very
know,
happy.
IFW agrees with me on this.
I mean, I
there's a
kinda
lot of
understand
potential
why
on
they
that
haven't.
on that
Which-
Daedric prince, and they'd really need to exploit him more.
Unrelated, I did make a character in ESO who is she's like a plague priest of Periite.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of, like, I gave her that diseased skin, and she's got a diseased horse. It's really cool.
Yeah, they have.
And what-
well,
so
they-
what
I
sort?
bet.
I was gonna say, so what sort of expectations do we have for Elder Scrolls 6
yeah.
and the Fighters Guild?
Well, I wanted to address that actually, because it's still sort of like my low key wish that Elder Scrolls 6 takes like the sort of martial arts of the Red Guard further
Yeah.
than most
Yes.
Elder Scrolls games does, And so, like, a variation of the Fighters Guild for the Red Guard would make me very happy if it was something very similar to the Zhang Hu and Wuxia novels, where it's just like an underground organization of fighters, and it's and they exist below the official, below the law, and they operate. Yes.
We already have that, the Ashaba.
Okay, but I'm saying it may not be in Elder Scrolls 6 is what I'm getting at. And that's what I mean. I'd like to see more. I'd like to see that kind of thing leveraged in Elder Scrolls 6. But I mean, the more Chinese ES6 is for me, the happier I am. That's how I am with Red Guard. It's until everybody's walking around wearing like Taoist robes and shooting lasers out of their swords, I'm not happy. So
just someone play Exalted with this man, please.
Yeah,
what I would like to see is the adoption of the term regatta as a this is we are the regatta. We have reclaimed this phrase. We are the red wave, and then having like different subsets of the regatta, and each different school focuses on a different martial weapon.
Yeah, there you go.
So we got swords, long swords. We've got we can dual wield a bow staff over here. Maybe you do the axe or something like because Red Guards are so martial. Like I feel like there'd be that kind of specialization. Oh, you want to learn to use the bow really well? Well, come on, join the regatta. We got a school right over here where you can learn to be a crack marksman.
Yeah, you want to learn how to cast spells? That's great. You can go fuck yourself.
You want to learn to punch somebody so hard that it factory resets them?
Yeah.
I've seen that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to learn how to swing a sword so good you split reality in half? We don't do that anymore.
We used to, but we forgot.
We used to do that, but we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, that's no longer covered.
But wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be cool if that was another set of this group is like sword singing, but there are no sword singers anymore, and so the school, technically it exists, but no one's in it.
Or there are no sword singer or official sword singers anymore, but we're all just basically trying to hack the techniques back. We have descriptions and we know the basics, so we're just going to be like hacking our way towards. Watch me swing this sword so hard that I can blow up a continent.
Now watch me whip. Now watch me.
Nene. Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure that with how Elder Scrolls 6 is probably going to go, is they're definitely going to be underground lost groups of Onse or just running around the Hammerfell and just haven't made themselves known. Because you even have in ESO, you have like Sahan who rediscovered how to make a Shihai, or you had
the vampire guy. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah. He honestly, that dude was just a side tangent, but he was just a very underutilized character.
Also, Ron comes directly from Yokuda too.
Yeah, like he literally he fought a fucking goddess to a standstill, and he gets regulated to like a B movie. But anyways,
he's such a cool character. I love that character.
I would not be surprised if we actually go back to Yokuda to learn sword singing in Elder Scrolls 6. Now that I think about it, that sounds like something very Bethesda.
A part of me wants sword singing to be a major part of Test 6. Yes, but I don't. But I really don't want a repeat of Dragon Shouts. I don't want to have. Okay, here's this special thing that you get to do. And sometimes it shows up in other places, but this is your special ability because you're the player and you're special.
I'm willing to bet you cash money. I'm serious about this. That Todd Howard has said exactly that phrase. I want it to be like the special mechanic that you have in this game, but I don't want it to be Thum. I strongly suspect that they're probably saying exactly that at Bethesda right now.
What if it ends up being kind of like Dark Souls combat?
How so?
Well,
you mean third person and endurance based and hard as a motherfucker?
Like sword singing is you've got to manage it. It's like you have regular combat and then you've got sword singing, which is a motherfucker in comparison.
Oh well,
it's hard.
The mechanics are going to be reasonably simple because that's
I'm not sure
the broadest possible audience that they're going to hit.
Yeah.
And it's also going to be first person. It's not going to be third person
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they can't.
Well, I mean, you can choose. You've always been able to choose first or third.
Yeah,
Just
but
it's been a wrong
Dark
choice.
Souls combat in first
Okay.
person does not work.
That would not work. Yeah.
Or,
But
no,
I'm not
not
sure what you
not
mean by
not necessarily Dark Souls. More like, oh God, what's that game where like the enemies only move when you do?
Oh,
Oh, super hot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of like Super Hot, where it's mechanically.
Wouldn't that be interesting if you were a dragonborn and you have that ability to slow time?
I tell you, like, yeah, like, not for nothing, but I mean, it's not. It wouldn't be the Shihai. It wouldn't be the same thing. But a gameplay like Super Hot in Elder Scrolls would be
That would be
pretty fucking
fucking
interesting.
dope.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the only way,
like a like a power that you can just activate and like, cool, you now have 3 minutes of time only moves when you do.
Right, or it's a meter
Yeah.
and it runs
I
out
mean,
as you move.
if
or
they
something.
are
or something like
if
that.
they
That
are
might.
going to include the Shahai and sword singing, I want it to be something intuitive, something new we haven't seen. That
Yeah.
Make it different from.
I have to tell you that's
from
very,
shots.
very unlikely.
I
Just
mean,
because we're talking about Bethesda here, and Bethesda makes ridiculously expensive games, and when you make ridiculously expensive games, you want safe. And so innovating
rhythm
is not
game.
on the list.
Because
of
then
things
you
that they
can
do.
milk it for 10 years. That's,
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
to be
Now in an
what's that?
expansion,
fair.
yeah,
What's
in
that meme?
DLC, I
I
would
can
not be
milk
surprised
you.
if they tried to do something interesting, but not in the main game.
Yeah. I mean, you could maybe make it kind of like a rhythm game, like attack at the right time.
Oh, I've played games like that. It's not bad. It's just not my kind of. It's not
Yeah.
my cup of tea. It's Elder Scrolls like Skyrim, especially for people who play Skyrim. They're in it to like. I honestly, I don't think people play Skyrim because they like the combat. I think they
No.
play it
No.
because they want to explore and have adventures and see amazing
Mm.
things. And I say that, however, Elder Scrolls 6, like Elder Scrolls 5's Skyrim's combat doesn't suck. It
No.
really doesn't. It's as a matter of fact, if anything, I like it even more than I like ESOs, because there's a gigantic number of tools that you can use. All this magic, all these different weapons, the Thume, etc.
I'd like to see more of that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I mean, give us so many options.
I want to punch explode someone.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's like a limit to how much content they can cram into these
Well,
games.
obviously, yeah. I mean,
Yep.
I'd like to see a monk class or something
Sure.
like a monk
Unarmed
or
should come back.
like
Yes.
like a monk bard,
Mhm.
the artificer,
Something?
kind of combo.
Mhm.
Because
Yep.
I mean, the necromancer has a couple different ways you can. Sorcerer has a couple different ways you can approach it.
Like do you guys remember Morrowind? How like the weapons in Morrowind have actual range, and if you have a spear, you could theoretically hit somebody farther away than if you were using a dagger or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
But in practice, it never really panned out. I just like the idea of like unarmed being the same thing, except with unarmed you have to literally be like right up against.
Yeah.
Like,
That's man. How many
Because-
bitchin' characters could you make with
A
an
lot.
unarmed skill?
Yeah.
You could make Sylvester Stallone.
yeah.
Well, I
And
think
then-
with the
Mhm.
I was going to go back a little bit and talk about how when you said Dark Souls combat, I got confused because I was trying to think exactly what you meant by that, because all
Not
the combat in all the
necessarily.
games
I-
are completely different.
Yeah.
More just precise, difficult combat to unlock rewards.
Well, I meant what I was talking about was resource management vis-a-vis endurance and health, and a combat that generally when I think of Soulsborne combat, I think of usually a lot of movement. But Dark Souls 2, if I recall correctly, Dark Souls 1, I think, was very sort of block and parry heavy. But generally, I imagine a lot of movement like you would get in Dark Souls 3 or in Bloodborne, and a lot of dodging. And generally speaking, for Soulsborne combat, it's just very, very difficult.
Well, it's more
Question.
fluid than anything.
It wants to be, yeah. Sure.
Question, given that we're talking about combat mechanics,
Sure.
do we think that the way that Elder Scrolls combat is in the games has actually had an impact on how the Fighters Guild is presented?
Yeah, I'll say so in a sense. It's
And
mostly
if so,
because
what?
How so?
I don't know.
Because we've been saying people don't play Skyrim for the combat, and if Fighters Guild quest lines are relatively simple things, and so that they're quite vanilla. Is that the reason why?
I would say this.
Kind of
I would say this is a case of correlation and not causation.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I would say that I think the reason why the Fighters Guild exists in Elder Scrolls games in one way or another is the same reason why the Mages Guild and the Thieves Guild exists, because there's still some people left over at Bethesda who want to do the Holy Trinity in every aspect. Like that's the theme of every game.
The players. I mean, players are going to want to do the fighting stuff. They're going to do the stealth stuff. They're going to want to do the magic stuff. Give them these avenues to explore that.
Yeah, and there's still players who do play Elder Scrolls games to a degree, kind of like a role-playing game experience, where they're not joining the Fighters Guild because that's not something their character would do.
And I heard LJ was going to react, so I want to give him a chance.
Oh, I was just thinking because as kind of continue on my point, the thing that I think you guys are really kind of trying to bring up is that something I always say in regards to how, because one of my things that was never going to happen is that I would love for From Software to remake Battlespire, because that would be the perfect game for them to do for an Elder Scrolls remake from their studio. But the thing that Dark Souls is probably really well known for, outside just fluid combat, in the sense that it's just it's just the movement that you can do, is that it's very versatile. In Dark Souls, you can basically have spells, weapons, weapon arts, and items all on your rig, ready to go for your particular build. You don't have to switch between things. You need to go to a menu to go to things like you do in Elder Scrolls. Everything's already available to you. If you already have it hotkeyed, you can go out, you can go kill some shit. That's what makes Dark Souls combat very fucking interesting, because you can have incredible amounts of builds, make any build you want. You can make a pure fate build, you can have a pure intelligence build, you can have a pure strength build, you can have a pure dex build. No, I like fucking dex users, but you can dex sucks, but you can make anything you want, and in Elder Scrolls you can't really do that.
No.
You can make a build, but you can't make an actual versatile build that really stands out on its own.
Because eventually you just end up playing a stealth archer. So
I didn't notice Felix showed up.
Yes,
Hi,
Felix. Felix,
Felix, welcome to this Dark Souls cast.
Yeah.
I was about to say, like, oh shit, do we already end and now we're on to Dark Souls now? Have we run out of
we were talking about the kind of things we would want to see in Test 6 in regards to the Fighters Guild or some kind of fighting focused faction.
And we have strayed entirely into the realm of mechanics.
Yeah, and now we're talking about
so then
Dark Souls.
Did we talk about the fact that the Warriors Guild, the Fighters Guild, etc., is necessary to the world because of reach heaven by violence?
No.
Please do continue, sir.
Okay.
Finally, somebody brought the tank.
This is what I'm here for, even if it's halfway through the fucking cast.
Felix is batting at 100 right now.
Yeah, he's
1,000 right now.
He's streets ahead.
To dank ratio.
Yeah. So,
Felix. Reach heaven by violence.
Yeah.
You have more, or would you like me to expand on that?
I mean, I'm fucking exhausted. Dude.
Okay.
So if you want to take over for that, that's great.
So actually, while I'm writing the 36 Lessons, violence is actually something that I've been having a really hard time struggling to define, because increasingly it's turning more into a Crowley term than a Gnostic term. But
ladies and gentlemen, we have entered the dank half of the cast.
Yeah, welcome to it. And so, but the easiest way for me to define violence in terms of metaphysics is violence is the act of it's not the result of combining chiral forces. It's the act of combining them. It's the process of it. So,
Chris, I know you don't have chat up, but the rats do lead to Amaranth, and this is how.
oh God. Shit. Well, it's just now I'm stuck thinking about the reticulum and the ratway and Albert Ross. And the Memospore ARG. So when we had so when you talk about reaching heaven by violence as far as like the Fighters Guild goes, the relevance to this is the act of reaching I forget which walking way it is. I think it's the second. It's reaching divinity through self-improvement. This is the Sermon of the Sword is the one I'm thinking of, appropriately for the Warriors Guild, and it's the idea of enlightenment through trial and error, frankly, of testing yourself continuously and improving yourself to the point where you've cut away all, you've trimmed off all the fat and you're just 100% muscle, and it ain't even ornamental, man. I mean, this is pure lift. This is nothing but gains. And and when you end up with if you had, for example, an NPC or a character in the Elder Scrolls universe who's actually interested in achieving some sort of divinity through the warrior or that path, then you're going to end up with a character who at some point or other is going to join the Fighters Guild just to be exposed to as much trial as they can get.
That would be an interesting NPC.
Well, yeah, but there's also a lot of things to be said in vis-a-vis the Warriors Guild just training and having a community of other fighters that you can train with. So there's a lot of personal improvement that can happen there.
It's why a bunch of people in the South go to the gun store every weekend. Or the gun
No,
range
they
every
go there
weekend.
because masturbating's illegal. Actually, let me look up.
But for like the community. Of it.
Oh no, yeah, sure, no, the community. Yeah, that's right. Circle jerks. Hold on a second. Let me get the warrior.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I've even heard
sign.
tales that they have a centipede that they use or something.
Before we go completely off the rails again, while Chris is looking for it, I do want to mention something about how another aspect about like violence, warriors guild, stuff like that. It is also basically a necessary thing in such a violent and chaotic world. Eras are usually defined after massive wars or periods of upheaval. The second era happened after like a massive violent act. The first era like erupted in a similar circumstance, or it came out of because I think the first era starts with the Cameron dynasty in Valenwood, which was after a period of just ridiculous fights, people vying for some kind of control, and then Valenwood was the first to say, all right, here's a kingdom, here's a bit of stability for a while.
Here's something. Yeah,
exactly, here's something.
Watch out for the bugs.
And I think it's also a reflection, if you keep in mind the idea of the world of the Elder Scrolls being the dream of a pissed off, vengeful god who murdered his brother and his lover. And he's trying to deal with that mentally while he sleeps in the sun. Because that all makes sense. Anyway.
And it's but it is about reliving trauma. Yeah. And that's kind of what the from a metaphysical standpoint, the Warriors Guild is about. I mean, this is definitely going to ring true with what we've been discussing so far. It's about establishing stability so that that stability can become undermined by the thief, and then the cycle repeat. The terrible violence continues.
Right. But the point that I was also sort of trying to get to before I derailed myself, because I'm tired and I just had to get a quip in. But like the main thing is that, at least for me, in terms of this part of things that we've been talking about is that it's also touching on something that I've like brought up before, like mini heresy moment, is that the sword that sank Yokuda was actually Anu from before, and that's why like Yokuda is the memory of like the past world of the previous dream or whatever. And that's why I think it was Todd Damrath and I years ago who talked about this, about how to cut the uncuttable was like a sword, nuke sword or whatever you want to call it, that was able to cut the heart of Lorcan, which then broke the world. And hence why they had to leave. And that's why, reach heaven by violence and everything being such a violent world, because that's the only frame of escape and divinity that Anu can understand, because it came from a world where that was the only way out, as it were. And so that's why, again, part of the importance of the Fighters Guild, or the Warriors Guild in general, some kind, is that it's a way out for people. It's a way of being able to escape poverty, to see more of the world, to get a bit of power when you feel you have none. The way of the warrior is a way out.
I'm not sure I agree.
Okay.
That being said, the strongest people I know are farm boys. So you just get a bunch of farm boys, give them pig stickers, and they can wreak havoc.
So
that's
what's
basically
Andrew coming
what
with?
Canada had in World War I. Was like, all right, here's a bunch of farmers. We're going to give them guns. And then we turned out to be one of the most effective fighting forces that the British Empire
really
could
well.
field. So.
I really want to respond to what you said, Felix. I agree with
You
your
have the talking
premises.
stick.
I agree with your premises that violence as a way out was a way for Anu to achieve Amaranth and become the current dream. That's always how I look at it. But because violence was so necessary, and Anu is dealing with the murder of his brother and wife, which he may have done, he may have killed himself or something. I always thought Padme might be a demonized, devil on my shoulder kind of thing, where the devil made me do it. And so that's an extant projection of the negative parts of Anu that Anu doesn't want to admit are him. And so because violence is so necessary in Anu's worldview, that is then adopted into Tamriel as a whole. Conflict is everywhere. That's why it's called the arena.
Yeah, I said that.
And that's yeah. It's
we're on the same page in that regard.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know that. I don't think that your Joe Blow who joined the Fighters Guild is thinking on those terms. They're thinking from their perspective, which is so colored by the conflict of Anu's psyche.
Well, you're also going to get, every so often, you're going to get a Hasfat antabolist, though.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're going to be few and far between, but by and large, this is not the motivation that people have. They have the motivation because of this worldview that Anu projects into the dream. I mean, that's why there's fighting all the time. And that's why, this gets into my ideas of Akavir as a separate dream. Akavir is a wholly good place. They're trying to help Tamriel, but Anu cannot see that help as help. He sees it as conflict, because conflict is so core to his worldview. So, if you're trying to help someone who has, let's say, a dog, for example, you find a dog, it's been beaten, it's starving, it's scared, you try to help it, what's it going to do? It's going to try and bite you. It sees that, it sees all kindness directed at it as potential conflict. And so that's why the Akaviri invaded, because they're trying to help, but Anu doesn't realize that. This kindness has now been turned into violence because that's all Anu knows.
It's a similar like metaphor, if you want to, or an example rather than a metaphor, is people, when you try and give them advice, they feel like you're attacking them, and it's like, no, that's not what this is at all.
Yeah, exactly,
I
that kind of.
But then, Andrew, I just want to clarify then, like, are you? Because I wasn't trying to say that like all people who join a version of the Fighters Guild are looking for divinity. They're just looking for a way out of their lower station of, I don't want to grow up and just be a farmer here and there. I want to see the world. How do I do that? Fighters Guild. Like, That's what I was saying.
Okay. And I thought that might have been, but I wanted to address it either way.
Okay.
It may not be a conscious thought that they have, but from a metaphysical standpoint, that is the purpose. Can we agree on that?
I think so, yeah. But I just
And
want
it
to
also-
clarify that distinction. Like, I'm not saying like people are joining the fighters guild to be like, I wish to be warrior monk.
Yeah,
Like,
we
I'm
don't
not
have
saying
we
that.
don't, Timmy from down the street, he's Siddhartha, and we've got,
I've read
somebody
my
over
philosophy.
here.
I'm ready to learn the way of the sword.
Yeah, Zoroaster's over here, and
maybe like 1 in 1,000 are, and they're just it's like the
1
chess
in
champion
1,008.
joining-
Yeah, that kid was fucked up before we got our hands on him.
but it's like the chess it's like the chess captain joining the football team.
yeah. Everyone's like, what a nerd, and then it turns out
He's
like,
actually
kick
really good
everybody's
because he
ass.
put the hours in and he got good at
again,
it.
that's Fasantapolis.
And
Yeah.
at first it's the nerd gets his ass kicked, and then once the nerd is now buff,
Yeah.
the nerd has strategy. You don't. You're about to lose.
Yeah. We're playing chess. You're playing checkers.
So
that's sort of interesting though. So just thinking about if we just going totally down the tinfoil hat rabbit hole.
Yes.
Let's do it.
If
Swirl that drain.
if we're if you're saying that the Akaviri invasions are the Akavir trying to express some sort of love or affection or something towards Tamriel that they're not really understanding, then the Sithim and the Fighters Guild is a good way of kind of imposing that, because if you think about the state as a thing that is necessarily connected to an expression of violence, and the Fighters Guild is kind of an expression of that, and the early Fighters Guild, the Sithim particularly, then has the Fighters Guild failed by becoming a franchise operation then? Should it have stayed more Akaviri in order to convey more Akaviri messages through the course of state-controlled violence?
It's not the same after they sold out, man.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty sure, like Felix, I'm sure LJ has read my essay on the lens of perception. That's kind of what I'm driving at.
I'm pretty sure I've read that. Yeah.
For those who aren't familiar, this is a theory I came up with a long time ago that kind of bounces off of Morella Ryan's ideas of the Godhead. That's between different dreams. It accepts the idea that Yokuda and Akavir are separate dreams by separate dreamers. And so and people always ask, oh, well, how can they be on the same planet? How can you go from one to the other?
And how can any of this happen?
It's a fantasy.
Jesus Christ.
And to that, my answer is usually, okay, well, you are aware of Lord of the Rings, right? In your head, you can go to Middle Earth, but you don't own Middle Earth. It's not yours. It's not, you have some idea of it. And
I think you'll find that I do, says Tolkien.
And that's what's happening when people from Tamriel go to Akavir or Yokuda. Yokuda is one thing because it's in the past. It's from Anu's past, and so Anu recognizes it and understands it, and so that's a more true interpretation of what the real Yokuda is.
Yeah, but either way, it's not going to work because it's always going to be a flawed perception of either of them. So
absolutely.
Akavir's message to Tamriel is never going to come through properly.
No. Because of that lens of perception. Because of
because we've got the House of We and Jubal and Vivek and the Flower Child and all these things. It's all peace and love and all of these objectively good sounding things. And then when they try to come back and try to elevate those people in Anu's dream, hey, this is the way, it's love is this way. They go, get over here. That's what they see. They see an attack.
Love, all I know is punch.
Quick question. Then why the monkey folk, what are they there? The
Tangmo.
The Tangmo. Why everybody fight the monkey people?
Because they're fucking annoying and they steal all our shit.
Because no one wants Sun Wukong.
Everybody wants Sun Wukong.
Gentlemen, has anybody here ever heard of this thing called the Joe Rogan podcast?
Oh God.
Unfortunately.
Sorry, who? Never heard of him.
One James Rogan of the House of Rogan.
Is that his name, James?
I don't know, and I don't care.
I mean Joe is usually short for like
yeah,
Joseph.
why?
Why bring him up?
Because the man likes the idea of the man knows monkeys are strong.
Yeah, he also likes MDMA. So
He-
you know.
I mean, he's also an anti-vaxxer.
No, see,
but come on.
if we're talking about the Tang Mo and why everyone else fights them, I kind of imagine like Japanese macaques, how they like go into like Japanese farms and they'll steal as much food as they can, and then eventually the farmers just get so sick that they'll catch one and they'll kill it in broad daylight in front of all the other monkeys and be like, "Hey, stay out, or this happens to you." And,
Jesus.
and so that's a real thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes it
happens all over the world wherever
Yeah,
there's like
it's not as-
small thieving monkey populations.
Yeah,
They
it's
used to
not a
try to
great
do the
video.
same thing with vultures.
Yeah.
Vultures would come onto would circle around farms and like eat all the rotting like cabbage and all that kind of stuff.
They
And
used
so,
to do the same thing with criminals.
well, but what they would do is they would kill the vulture in front of all the other vultures and then like hang the corpse outside of the farm. So it'd be like, if you come into the farm, this is what happened to do. And you know what happened? The vultures ate the corpse and kept coming into the farm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, cool, free food.
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
hated Dave.
That's about what I expected to happen. Yeah.
So,
Dude,
but
it's just like, dude, we eat carrion.
yeah, get it through your heads. So what? So, I mean, I do we have anything else to cover? Because we're at an hour and a half, which
I
is
mean,
Not really.
I
pretty
don't
good. I
think
want to thank
so.
Felix for showing up and reminding me that
We-
this is supposed to be a dank cast.
We really tried. We
Yeah.
really stretched the connections. I think of how
how
far
we
can
do.
we take things relevant to the fighters guild. Like we
Okay,
really
hey.
kind of reached.
Other question: if we're talking transcendence, um,
Oh boy.
what we talked about the Fighters Guild and the history. Are they trying to pull something like that, or would they be steered towards something like that through using the hist sap? Are they going to be? Was it just if we drink hist sap we get stronger,
That was
or
that was just steroids for the
Yeah.
Blackwood
Yeah,
company. I mean, that's pretty much how they were using it.
I'm still not convinced that was a history at all.
so they're just getting high on
have
amber?
They just found a really great tree, man. I
They've
mean,
just
you
got a
gotta try
redwood.
this tree out.
They're stabbing this
Oh,
redwood,
cut-
drinking the sap. I'm like, yeah.
Redwood. Come on, man. It's a maple tree. They're basically Canadians. That's
It's a
what
black
Basically,
wood.
that's right.
It's
That's
a
right.
black
Canadians
wood
in
tree.
ESO are basically like regular people except on PCP. So, yeah.
Is that not us IRL though?
Yeah,
Like,
right,
come
right.
on.
It's
I was
identical.
gonna say that, but I didn't want to offend anything.
And
It's
so,
pretty hard to offend us these days because like half of us are like, yeah, no, we recognize our nation is objectively terrible in a great many ways. At the same time, there's some good stuff here. So.
yeah.
yeah,
And,
maple syrup.
Well,
yeah.
I have some organic maple syrup from
Poutine.
Vermont. That's really, really good. I don't
It's
think
not
I mean,
maple
Vermont is
Canadian.
basically Canada.
Basically the
so,
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like no offense, but basically like upstate New York, Vermont,
Like,
New Hampshire,
I
and
would-
Maine
I
are
would live in
basically
Vermont.
indistinguishable from Canada, except for like the politics and the flags.
Mhm.
But in terms of driving around,
and
it's like-
how colorful the money
Like
is.
if we just changed the flags, I could not tell the difference
So-
between like this part of New Hampshire and like the eastern townships of Quebec. They just speak English and the flags are different, but like visually and culturally, it's very similar in a lot of ways.
and
Like,
the
it's-
accent is just as impenetrable.
We love
again.
Quebec.
Mm.
There is a question in chat here before we wrap up. Is there anything interesting about how the Fighters Guild interacts with other guilds? This question was from Alduin's Big Pussy.
Oh, thanks, Alduin. Alduin's big pussy is always good for really insightful questions.
Yeah. Although I usually, to prevent TOS violations, I refer to them as Alduin's Big Khajiit. Like
I don't
just
care
for
about
TOS
TOS.
reasons.
It's with
I
an
can-
I, so it's okay.
So
Oh,
what
well,
we
okay.
Alduin has an eye in it.
how has the
Wait,
Fighters
yes, it
Guild
does.
integrated with other guilds in the past, though?
I
Have
mean,
they?
I think.
Well,
I mean,
you see, they did
can
this whole
work
thing where they
together
fought against Molag Bal.
Yeah.
Well,
they teamed up
okay,
with the
yeah.
Mages
with the
Guild.
Mages Guild. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
What Felix? Felix, what?
Yes. Hi. Okay. So in Morrowind,
Mhm.
if you actually do the Fighters Guild and the Thieves Guild quest lines together, there's one point where you basically have to choose
Yes.
because it involves you
Yeah.
stealing from the Fighters Guild. And the Fighters Guild makes great mention in
it's-
Morrowind about how they fucking hate the Thieves Guild.
It's a
Oh,
little
yes, the
deep.
code
It's a
book.
little deeper than that, actually. We talked about this in chat earlier, and I don't
Okay.
know if it never got brought up in the cast here, but there is a kind of a subplot that runs underneath both the Fighters Guild and Thieves Guild in Morrowind, and I if memory serves, the idea is that some of the Fighters Guild has been infiltrated by the Kamana Tong, and the Kamana Tong is actively trying to eliminate the Thieves Guild.
Yeah.
Because they see them as stepping on their turf and they're
Yep.
an imperial thing, and it's like, yo, like, hello,
Yeah,
this is the Kimona Tong and Morak Tong territory.
Yeah,
Everyone else can fuck off.
Kamana Tong are like staunchly traditionalists. Like
I view them
they're
as like
xenophobic.
Sicilian mafia. It's
Yeah.
like
Kinda,
we
Yeah.
have rules.
Tradition.
You'll come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding.
Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, Duke Vader on Dren kind of sounds like that.
You don't even think to call me godfather.
day of my daughter's wedding?
You come to my day, my daughter's wedding day, and you offer me money. You don't even think to call me godfather. Oh.
It's really good.
Five
Merlin
hundred
Brando.
This is now
Look
like
what they did to my boy. They
this
massacred
is
my
now a
boy.
Godfather impressions cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'll show up with the Christopher Walken, and
Yeah.
it'll just ruin everything.
In any case, though, like, yeah, there's clear interactions with them, both positive and negative, with other.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, with any various groups, they're gonna interact at some point or another. I mean, I think of the Fighters Guild as like I mentioned earlier, the mercenary companies of Sword of Ice or A Song of Ice and Fire, where they just kind of do their thing. They go where the business is, and if they end up working with another company, so be it. They may be fighting that same company next month. They don't really know.
That's what happened to Carthage.
Yeah, I mean, that's we're worried about what's happening right now and how we can make money now.
Yeah.
When we're hired to kill you,
then we'll talk.
Yeah, we're
Well,
gonna
that
accept
works.
the money and we will come for you. But don't make any enemies, okay?
Okay.
That's
One other thing
It's
that
the
I
guns.
would like to add,
Yeah.
sort of tangentially related, is like, I'm assuming we all already talked about how there are like multiple different sort of fighters guilds or versions of them. There's also still a distinction between certain select like orders, like we saw in Oblivion, where you could join certain knightly orders.
they're
and
night
then
like that.
also like sort of more religious things, like doing the Knights of the Nine quest, or the concept of the Ansei, the sword singers.
Yeah, we talked about the
in
Ansei a little
Hammerfell.
bit. We talked
Silver
about
Hand.
Actually, that is interesting. What's the difference between a fighters guild and an order of knights?
well, the Fighters Guild is imperial, and I would say knights are adherent to a specific throne or city-state.
Knights don't have to be. I think it comes down to paperwork.
I mean,
again. It's about their code of conduct. It's about what kind of jobs they accept and don't accept.
When you think of the rules of like chivalry and things like that, they have a lord. I mean, they're like samurai in that respect. I mean, knights and samurai are very similar. Other than how they view honor in combat. I mean,
it depends on what era you're talking about. What year you're talking about the knights.
You think in like a knightly duel, if one of the guys gets knocked over, well, the other combatant, being a good sport, will help him up.
Yeah.
But then a samurai, it's like, haha, you're dead, and that's because you take that opportunity to kill, and the person on the ground, they understand. Hey, you won. You got me on the ground. I meet my death willingly. Like that's kind of the.
Meanwhile, if it's a nightly duel, the guy's going to be calling foul right as the maul hits his
yellow
face.
flag gets thrown up in the air.
There is the kind of the connotation of loyalty to a cause, though. I think is the thing.
Yes.
I want to point out that that the Mages Guild, when they started, they had to defend their premises, and they basically hired guards who presumably just flipped when someone gave them a better offer. It doesn't say that they were the Fighters Guild, but they had mercenaries, and so they founded the Order of the Lamp in order to just engender that sort of a loyalty. So I think that's the difference, that you've got loyalty to something other than fight and cash.
Well, yeah, because it's important because I'm actually glad you brought up the idea of counterpayments. It's important when you're a mercenary for you to have something like a code of conduct. Even at the very least, that code of conduct is, if you pay me this amount of gold, then from this date to this date, I will serve only you, and it doesn't matter how much somebody else hires me for. Because as a employer of a mercenary, I want to make absolutely sure that if I offer you 100 gold to guard my safe, and then another guy comes along and offers you 150 gold to go somewhere else, you're not going to go somewhere else. That's sort of that's kind of like a guarantee that any employer is going to want, is that I need to get what I paid for, even if somebody comes along with more money than me.
Yeah.
And because the Fighters Guild is state backed, you can also assume that that's going to have some level to do with it as well.
Yeah, some measure of honesty,
of legality, or contracts.
Yes, standardization of like honor or something. Like, if you say you're going to do something, at least see it through.
Yeah, and if the Fighters Guild guys that I hired desert after halfway through their contract, then I get to go to the head of the Fighters Guild and say, your guys left halfway through the contract, and get a refund or something like that.
Yeah, or be reimbursed, or those guys get kicked out or something like that.
Right. Yeah, contracts are pretty important for this kind of stuff. That I think is, whereas knights, on the other hand, are going to there's probably still going to be a contract of some kind.
It's usually verbal, I would imagine. Like, yes, I solemnly swear to,
I think to a degree, yes. But if I recall correctly, in real life, I believe that when knights signed up, when somebody became a knight, there was paperwork. I think there was documents that had to be sold, that had to be signed and notarized, because you had to be able to then prove that you were a knight in the service of a person.
James, I think, wanted to say something. And if not, then I have a bit of insight into how certain knightly orders worked and how they came about.
Oh, good.
Yeah. It's gone.
Oh, okay.
It may come back.
All right. So here's the thing, right? Is just to use our actual real world and how various knightly orders of variety came out, but we're going to focus more on the European ones because people will know some of them. They often started by trying to be a state or kingdom oriented solution to a problem. So, for example, the very famous Knights Templar, they originally got their start protecting Christian pilgrims on their way to pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Now, obviously, their mission creep got way out of hand to the point that led to their eventual destruction. But initially it was a bunch of guys who got together like the Church on the Mount or something like that, and said, you know what, it's dangerous roads out there, we are good Christians and we should protect our fellow Christians. Here we form a brotherhood to protect pilgrims. That's how it started. The Knights Hospitaller, where we get the word hospital from, said, there's a lot of sick and needy people here. We're going to build big fortified places where the sick can come and get better, and they're not going to be killed or slaughtered, and we're going to protect them so people can't just come in and stab a dude who's missing a leg or something while he's recovering.
Looking for this guy. Hey.
But that's how the Knights Hospitaller got their start. The Order of Malta was again all about giving refuge and protecting the sea lanes in the area from piracy, and giving refuge to people who had either been shipwrecked or were on their way through and very poor and needed some help for supplies or water, whatever. That's how these things start. Now, obviously they got bigger and things changed, but the original purpose of knightly orders was the king or the kingdom or the empire are too busy to do all these different things. So we, a brotherhood of people who have a like-minded view about this one thing, want to do it. In a way, you can think of it as a really weird and noble, selected class version of ever so slightly mutual aid, kind of we want to secure roads. So the knightly order of the Rose of St. Abbotsford is, where we protect these roads that lead to this kind of remote monastery and protect people heading to these few towns along the way. We're basically the police, but we're a knightly order. That's how a lot of them worked. However, they were also very open to corruption. So you could have basically some noble douchebag, and he gets a couple of his bros together, and then some of their friends, and they're like, what do you call them, like enforcers, say, yeah, we're knightly order. Oh no, we're guarding this road. Pay up. Like it became a racket. So there were different ways in which knightly orders came about and what they started as.
And even I mean, you can kind of extend the idea to samurai during like the Meiji Restoration, when samurai were no longer needed. They became effectively Ronin, got into a lot of drinking, a lot of gambling. Suddenly they're criminals, and because they've lost their purpose as a class, as a fighting force, and as a class of people. Is that the samurai used to be so respected, and then they just weren't anymore because of Japan, westernizing.
Goddamn westernization!
Oh, we fuck everything up.
Why except cheese production. We're really good at cheese.
Yeah, dairy is something that we have on our hands. Yeah, that's true.
Mostly because we're the only ones that can actually eat cheese. But
actually,
my box of lactate disagrees with you.
For a different time. I actually know about this stuff. It has to do with genetics and people with cattle populations.
Felix knows
exactly.
Yeah.
But so in essence, the difference between like a knightly order and the Fighters Guild is that the knightly order is like a country club, and the Fighters Guild is a union job.
Yeah.
More or less, if you want to just really bare bones it like that.
Which actually works on a lot of levels, because a lot of knights were born into the position. You can't, if anybody's seen Knight's Tale or read their Chaucer, you know that you can't just throw plate mail on and call yourself a knight. Shit don't work that way.
Then if you do, you're just an armored nuisance.
Yeah, if you do, you're violating the law.
Yeah, even if you were born to it, it could cause issues. If you were kind of far enough down the pecking order of the sonship, you basically had nothing to do because all you had was your title and no wealth. So you turned to banditry anyway.
Yeah.
I think I have a copy of all Chaucer's stuff.
Same. I should see.
What is that?
For an English teacher, of course, you have a copy of Chaucer somewhere.
Yeah.
But
the life of Bath and
but which version of English is it in?
I was just about to say, like,
is
it the hard version or the easy version?
Relatively contemporary.
Okay.
I think.
Is it the really hard version, the kind of hard version, or the
the old English version?
Yeah, the one with the spelling issues.
No, it's not Old English. Old English is Beowulf and sounds more like German. It's Middle English.
Well, now I'm gonna go look.
Yeah, it's Middle English. You're right.
We are such fucking nerds.
Welcome to the premise of this cast.
Yeah, I think I have Chaucer.
I think is it in the Old English or the original? It's not. None of it's Old English. It's Middle English.
It's actually
anyway,
we are it's not Old English because it's more like this. Like, my fucking god.
So my mother has a degree in history.
The one that sounds German. Yeah.
She actually. So I actually learned Chaucer in Middle English first.
Jesus.
Oh god.
Yeah.
That's rugged.
Yeah.
That was rugged.
Yeah, it was.
That's
it
hipster.
Was fun.
That's hipster.
Do you know it's in the real Middle English?
There it is, Canterbury Tales. Okay, but what kind of English you got in there? Is it readable or is it a puzzle?
Let's see. Edited by V.A. Colth, England, Olson, the Norton Critical Edition.
Just read a paragraph out loud.
Let's see.
I think my version.
No. This has lots of spelling problems.
Oh, good.
First on the wall was painted for. I think it's painted PEYNTED, a forest with an E on the end, in which
they put E's on the end of everything.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how well you can.
Yeah, I don't think that's Middle English. Is it?
That's Middle English.
Okay.
Middle English, yeah.
Because
Middle English is the English that kind of looks like English, and you can read it, but you get a headache. Old English is just Norse.
German. Yeah.
Beowulf, I believe, is written in Old English, and it sounds very German.
Yeah.
It has a lot of Germanic.
I think that's probably why I ended up learning German instead of Spanish, because my brain was already primed for it.
Dr. Knights, no, I too can write Middle English after 3 classes. Yeah.
On an unrelated note, that's something I actually really enjoyed about the TV show Vikings, is that when they show them meeting the English, and like, sure, we hear them speaking English, but when we see it from the Vikings perspective, they're actually speaking
Awesome.
old English, and so they're
Wow.
saying like
That's actually really cool.
Yeah.
This ust Vesse Oxa instead of
Yeah.
this is Wessex.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, I love you.
That's fantastic. That's really
actually
great.
awesome.
I've been meaning to watch that show, but I don't. Anyway, hey,
It-
We are.
It's
Fighters Guild.
I think we're good here. I think we're good here.
I think
Yeah.
We're at an hour and
Did we
53
want-
minutes.
Did we want to get to an email?
Oh yes, do we have
We
one?
had an email.
Yes, do we have one?
Yep.
We have an email.
we do.
Gotta have like a
we need
like
a,
a
Yep.
we
we
need
need
a
a
blue,
jingle.
we need a Blues Clues jingle.
Mhm.
Yeah, from Jan, we have, "Hi, love the podcast. I've noticed that a lot of quests in Skyrim are quite similar, be it the main quest, Dark Brotherhood, Thieves Guild, DLCs, or even some side quests like the one about Patema. There's always something in the past so long ago that people think it's a myth, and they make a point of having somebody ridicule the very possibility of it. But guess what? It's coming back to bite everyone on the ass now. Be it dragons, the Night Mother Nocturnal, vampires, Mirak, better go deal with them or the world's going to end. What's up with that? Is there something
That's-
going on with Mundus?"
That's a commentary on Reaganomics.
Yeah.
that is one of my favorite emails ever, and that's
Yeah.
like one of the rants I do on my YouTube channel.
Yeah. It's actually okay, so that happens a lot. Like, all right, so I'm going to be we're going to start by being very generous. Okay. So one of the great aspects about one of my favorite aspects about Tamrielic history is how goddamn long it is. It's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. The example that I keep giving people is the United States is what, 450 years old, right? Can you-
230.
something like that.
Yeah, 400 is a bit much.
So the excuse me. So the thing that I keep
Discovery
bringing
of
up is can you tell me definitively whether or not George Washington had wooden teeth or not? And most people hem and haw about that shit. They are not sure. And I think it's interesting that we're only talking about about 200 something years ago, and we're talking about one of the founding fathers, one of the most important people in the history of American history, and you don't know whether or not his girl was fucked up or not. And that's, I think that's really, really relevant to when you're talking about Tamrielic history, and when you start to see repetition of things like, oh, this demon has come back, or this we've rediscovered this ancient horror or something, and that everybody thought was a myth. In Skyrim, for God's sake, they have people saying like, I thought dragons were a myth. I thought they were all dead. No, they're just gone for a little while, you idiot. That kind of stuff.
It's like living in the early 1900s and saying,
that's
I
one
thought
of-
these Egyptian tombs were a myth.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to bring up, is that you have that additional layer of recorded history is not nearly as accurate in Tamriel as it is in the past like 1,000 odd years of human history. What's up, Felix?
Well, just a few things. I know we've actually brought that point up about George Washington before, and I know
Yeah.
the answer to that.
Oh, yeah.
No.
He had
it's-
no
He had a
teeth.
bunch.
He didn't have a mouth.
his teeth were made of a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
It was ebony
animal-
and not ebony, ivory, and a little bit of
teeth
metal.
and bones, and also slave teeth.
Yeah.
But the second point I wanted to make was to add to your point. There's also the issue of another great example for me that I would love to use too. That's a great example with George Washington, about how even just only a couple centuries ago we don't know.
Yeah.
There's also the
there's
issue
doubt.
of-
We know, but most people don't. Is what
Right.
what my point is.
It's not common.
Mhm.
We experts
Okay.
know. We, the general population, don't.
If I can just
There you go.
say the piece though, another great example to use is Troy. So Troy was, it's in this big epic. We think, oh, he's surely embellishing. We can't find any evidence of Troy in real life whatsoever. But eventually, enough archaeologists kind of put their collective brains together and figured out, wait, no, you know what? We actually found Troy. It's here on the coast of Turkey.
Mhm.
But that was something that had become so lost over the thousands of years
Mhm.
and buried under the sands that it's like, wow, actually, okay, no, apparently Troy did exist.
Mhm.
We thought
Yeah.
it was
Did-
a
did-
myth and
did-
an allegory for something.
Yeah,
right?
and it's a
Which now,
whole
unfortunately,
ass-
Say
means that
Troy?
the people who are like, that means Atlantis is real. And it's like, okay, no, cool your jets, but
I mean, theoretically, Atlantis could have been a settlement, an island dedicated to Poseidon. But
whatever.
Atlantis, the myth, no. Atlantis, the farming village, yeah, probably.
But that's basically largely my point, is that
Yeah.
you can't really, if you take the way history is recorded in Tamriel, which is badly, and then like largely word of mouth, which we know is mutant as shit. And I mean, like word of mouth, the way that people are currently talking about things is not representative of the way that they have been in the past. And to prove my point, just take a look at what Snoop Dogg is doing nowadays. White mothers think that dude is fantastic.
And Dog and Martha Stewart, which one's been to jail?
40 years ago, they thought he was a straight devil. So I mean, like that's just, I mean, it's just an interesting a mutation of fact. And so when
I'm pretty sure Snoop Dogg has been to jail, but he's not a convicted felon.
Yeah. So in the I don't know the guy's rap sheet. I'm whatever.
Maybe.
So when it comes to so the idea of returning evil in plots in Elder Scrolls video games makes perfect sense to me. Of course, people in Skyrim, which was like Skyrim used to be like obsessed with dragons. Of course, they don't know whether or not dragons like definitively or not exist or not, because it's been what I think somebody actually worked out. It was like over 1,000 years. I think it was like over 1,000 years before, or thousands of years before a dragon had been seen.
To now,
Yeah.
Yeah. And exactly, yeah, and that's a great point. It's like there's all kinds of really great examples. If you go back 1,000 years in in Earth history and see what was happening back then, it'll shock the hell out of you, the kind of stuff that was happening 1,000 years ago. That feels like a completely different like dimension, like it happened to a completely different like planet altogether.
And more importantly, 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Going back even 1,000 years in history.
And
what's shocking is how little we know.
Right. And
about things that we think we know a lot about.
Yeah, because record keeping is rugged.
And not even just record keeping, but shifts in language. I mean, like
and politics and records being destroyed.
Up until very, very, very recently, we had almost no idea about the written records of Mycenaean Greece. I think it was like maybe 2 years ago when we had kind of a major breakthrough in the language.
Yeah.
All I remember is my Greek history professor walking into class one day and just being like, "Surprise! The first half of this class was wrong."
Yeah. You BS majors, get used to this.
That would have been like simultaneously a great and terrible day, because on the one hand, tell me more, I wish to know, and the other half of me is like, fuck you.
Yeah.
We'd already had
so what's going to be on the exam, dipshit? Yeah.
We already had the midterm, but that lecture went from like 10 minutes before class started to a half hour after it ended.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I'd like to go back to the email question.
Yes. Okay. And so that's the so that's the reason why shit gets forgotten. Why is there now, like, if you were to ask me, like, why is it often the same things that get forgotten? I don't know necessarily if that's true.
I mean, myths and I mean, that's just kind of the way of history. Things bob back and forth.
Yeah.
Things are,
And the more extraordinary something is, I mean, like, if your friend Bob catches a fish that's as tall as he is and he doesn't have photo proof, are you going to believe him?
No.
I mean,
Bob's an asshole. He doesn't know what he's talking
about. Let's say there was a huge storm or something that completely buried all the Easter Island heads. And then 1,000 years later, they were found again. Whoa, we had no idea these were here.
Why did they bury them under the ground like that?
Yeah, exactly. And it just comes back up. I mean, it's just the ebb and flow.
Why would aliens come to this remote island and bury statues underground?
Plus, you've got things like
those aren't statues; those are just fossilized aliens.
For the example of the example of Patema, just as an example, like that's someone who lost. And to go all aphoristic on people, history gets written by the victors. So this whatever details, particularly details you don't want people to remember. I mean, for in the example of Patema, Skyrim was supposedly flooded with Daedra for a good chunk of her reign, but you don't really want people to remember that, so you leave details out or you exaggerate others to serve whatever purpose you're doing in the telling.
I would
so you're never going to get the whole picture anyway.
That aphorism history is written about winners. We
Good
don't
call.
we don't necessarily care about losers.
Well.
Like how much do you know about the German army during World War One? Less than you know about ours or the British or the French.
Oh.
Well, I
Mhm.
think
Except for the fact that their uniforms were pretty cool. I mean,
I
Very,
think while the phrase James used is largely accurate, there are instances where it's actually the opposite. Take for example the Confederacy.
Yeah.
They spent a long time revising history to make themselves and their goals look better than they actually were.
and that was a largely response to social movements in the 1920s.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
So
I mean, I
it
don't.
was
I could talk for hours just on that alone. I don't want to
Yeah.
get too far down that.
when
wanna-
when
I
I
left
lived
that
in
part of
South
the country
Carolina,
to get away from that kind of shit. So
yeah, when I lived in South Carolina, there was actually a museum called the Confederate Relic Room.
oh,
Not museum, it was relics of
Relics.
the Confederacy.
Yeah, make it
And-
sound cooler.
And it was actually the cool thing about it was it was written by the losers.
yeah.
The Confederates, basically, the wives and daughters
Yeah,
of Confederate
the-
soldiers.
The
pretty
War
much
of Northern
immediately-
Aggression, the
Uh,
Colfax riots, and not the Colfax massacre.
et cetera,
I mean,
et cetera. But
yeah.
but the cool thing about it was a spectacular view into the pathology of the losing side in a conflict. And also the curator of the museum hated the Confederacy.
Yeah.
Like hated them.
Well, all right.
When the politics when it started becoming politically inconvenient for southern states to fly Confederate flags, he was the guy appointed to show the Confederate flag that had been flown at the Capitol, and he was like, "Oh, I hate this. Screw this. I'm going to put this in a corner, and it's going to get an inscription the size of like a freaking fortune cookie."
Yeah.
So
one
if I,
other thing, just about the email, it could also just be repetitive storytelling. Like we see it a lot in past movies, like boy meets girl, girl hates boy, girl falls in love with boy, they live happily ever after, or
Okay,
Storytelling.
we know you're
like, we're thrown
Canadian,
into an
but
adventure. Like
you don't have to throw Avril Lavigne down our throats.
are you
If
holding
you're
up a
gonna throw
hand?
any Canadian at us, throw Ryan Reynolds. We want him.
Yeah.
No,
Are you
okay,
holding up a
Justin
hand here?
Bieber and
What's
Drake,
going on?
that's it.
Speaking as a heterosexual man, I would let Ryan Reynolds dominate me.
Every heterosexual man would. He's our general.
I mean, he is a gorgeous man.
Um.
I'm going to tell him you said that.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you
Every
guys meet
Canadian has a
at the
group chat or
meetings?
something.
So
Anyway,
I wanted to have my response to that email from a literary perspective.
Yes. Good, because I was about to ask.
So, yeah. Honestly, I think a lot of it is just a theme that they're trying to present. It's it tries to create depth in the history of the world, and that the history still connects to now. And it may be making a statement about Tamriel as a whole. Things are just constantly happening here. It is the arena. We've always got some danger we've got to deal with, and in this manner of time, I mean, it's part of the cycle. And so the theme there is I would say paying attention to the past and being prepared to deal with the old scores that have yet to be settled.
And from a psychological perspective, nothing is ever truly over.
no,
Right.
that's also
the dream
why
of a highly traumatized individual.
that's
It's going to
also
repeat
why
until they're done with until they're done processing.
That's also why stuff gets forgotten as well, because I mean the apocalypse that happened last month has already been you've already had two others since then. So we didn't have time to write all of the stuff down because we were too busy surviving the apocalypse last Tuesday.
Things were flying at us.
Look, man, this is just a normal Tuesday for all of us at this point.
Yeah.
It's Saturday.
It's
Saturday, time for your weekly apocalypse.
I do like the idea that having these sort of like horrible things that happened in the past coming back to haunt us. It creates that sense of how old Tamriel is.
Yeah.
And
it
how
creates a sense of urgency, a sense of grandeur, a sense of it's something that you have to stop and go, oh wow, this is a big deal.
Yeah, and it also allows you to say something like, you can also have dialogue to the point of, yes, this is we know that this is a terrible existential threat because the last time it happened,
yeah,
this, and we don't want things to get that bad, so we're gonna cut this one off like before things get really terrible.
But then the bit with the naysayer character, the non-believer who doesn't, oh, that's just a myth. Don't bother with that. I wonder if that's almost the voice of the world responding to these dangers in a realistic way. It's the perspective of the world as a whole. No, we live in a normal world where these things don't happen, which maybe ties it to our world, and so we can relate to that. And I mean, that may just be kind of I don't want to say cheap literary device, but it is an easy literary device.
Well, that was where I was headed with my mean answer. I gave my nice answer before. My mean answer was these are relatively easy plot devices to come up with.
And you can vary them enough that they don't seem so repetitive. But obviously it wasn't not repetitive enough.
Strings dying a little bit, yeah.
And I sees true.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll and that's sort of one of the issues that the most negative thing that I can say about this about that tendency in Elder Scrolls lore is that it's either stuff that has happened that they've written out in the past, and it may be dead entirely. I may have to hold on a second. I might have to reboot this.
I've got to
stop streaming. Start streaming. So it might be a little bit rude to say that sometimes these are stories that the developers have written and they kept in the back of their head, and they're like, I want to do something more with that, and they drag it out because there are no new ideas and whatever. I mean, it's
authors like writing sequels.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We like to continue old stories, familiar stories. People come back for the familiar stuff.
Yeah.
Inhabiting
Star Wars episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my partner's an author, and once you inhabit a character for long enough, they don't go away.
Yeah.
They don't go away.
Ideally, yeah.
They kind of take a
life of their own. Unless they're dead, in which case you write a prequel.
Well, I mean, Johnny Depp talks about how he's still trying to shake Hunter S. Thompson up, so that's apparently a role that he's never been able to quit. So,
well, I mean, even playing like D&D, I mean, that's something I kind of play with sometimes when I have my character, and I try to determine what they will do, but I give up my own responsibility to that character, and I let the character make the choice. There is no character; it's all imaginary. It's all in my head, but still, it's them with the reins. So it's almost like I've created this deciding force that can somehow make choices independently of me consciously. And that's always fun to experience. That's always fun to play with.
So,
sorry, writing... real quick. I haven't heard from Icefire Warden in a while.
Yeah, you still there?
Got any thoughts?
Oh yeah, I'm still here. I'm also just working on an essay right now.
Oh, okay.
What's up?
All right. So I mean, I hope that answers the question. It's it's a little bit of like everything that we're just discussing. It's a little bit of I wouldn't call it lazy writing, but it is it's repetitive writing, and it's
convenient. That's a good.
And it's the writing because at Bethesda, at the very least, the developers are also frequently writers, and they have like ideas that they really like to use, and or little bits of lore that they wrote about in the past that they want to fool around with a little bit, and it's fine. I mean, it's their
like,
baby; they can do what they want.
It's like Train was with trains. Everybody has I like trains.
Yeah. Hey, what's up?
By the way, because of that, bingo.
Yeah. Oh, hey, there you go. So I think that's going to do us for today. I'm going to call it because we've just been we've hit 2 hours and 15 minutes, and we're just hugely off topic.
Yep.
But
if you do want to send us an email,
thank
though,
you.
drop us a line to ramble about at length and go hugely off topic. We are selectiveslorecast@gmail.com, and send us an email and we will get to it.
Yeah, provided I stream sometime in the next 6 months. I'm moving into the house September 1st. So
That's Harry Potter's birthday.
or possibly the 23rd of August. So we'll see. I don't want to guarantee anything yet. Anyway, thanks very much, everybody. We will see you. I don't know when we're going to stream next, so that's all there is to it.
We'll see how
as
it
soon as I
goes.
humanly can. All right. Everybody wave.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.